Hello, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining me. I'm Trent, and if it's your first time here, thanks for coming. If you're a returning visitor, thanks for returning here. I updated my streaming software yesterday, so I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that everything goes well here. I had some graphics drivers issues, but I think I sorted them out, so just keeping everything, keeping my fingers crossed, as I say. I see some of you guys are in the chat already. Pisk6, thank you for joining from Texas. Sekhmet Tara, hello once again. And Hector, hello from New Jersey. I'm up in Massachusetts, so a little bit north of you. So if you've never been to one of my streams before, usually I talk about some main topic that I prepared and made some videos, made a video on this week that I'll be publishing shortly. And this week's topic is frequency separation. And then after, I'll go over some of the questions that I've gathered throughout the week, either comments you've had on my videos or emails, stuff that would kind of benefit everyone, I think, from an answer out in the open. Certain technical topics related to Affinity or graphics or something like that. Hello, Matrix Tech. So the topic today, frequency separation, it's something related to working with photos, and it's a common thing in Affinity Photo, of course, but also Photoshop, lots of graphics applications. And the kind of way you see it talked about a lot is, it's kind of like click some buttons, do some stuff, but there's a lot of terminology that is not really explained, or it doesn't really, people don't really kind of tell you what's happening, like why you should do certain things. So I really wanted to go over this topic from the ground up, and that's kind of my goal today. So we'll kind of talk about some things separately to begin with, some lower level topics, and we'll kind of build it up into coming to frequency separation at the end. So hope that works for you guys. Let me move over here to Affinity Photo. So let me know if you guys can still see me. My screen jumped a little bit, but I'm hoping it's still there for you. Now, before we talk about this, let's kind of talk about what problem are we trying to solve? Like, why does any of this matter here? So like I said, this is a photo editing technique. And when we look at a photo, usually there's two parts of a photo you can think of. There's the low detail areas, and then there's the high detail areas. Okay, so in this photo of this flower here, the low detail area would be kind of all this blurry background information here. And then the high detail area you could think of as the leaves here, okay? So we can think of an image as having two kind of main areas. Now, what we like to do is we like to clean up our images, right? So one thing we want to do when we clean up low detail areas is remove noise. So if I zoom in here, you can see there's all these kind of random little pixels here, all these little colors of little reds and slight blues and things like that. And a way to get rid of this is to add a blur filter. So this is something we often want to do to clean up low detail areas. So what I can do is I can go to a live filter here. And I can just add some type of Gaussian blur. There's different blurs, but Gaussian is pretty much one of the standard ones. And I'll just increase the radius here. And we actually get a nicer look to our low detail area. However, of course, there's a problem, and that is that if we zoom out, we've destroyed a lot of the detail in our high detail area. So this low detail fix actually harmed our high detail area. Now let me delete this. Now conversely, we can have the opposite problem. Hi Teek, thanks for joining. Let's say we want to sharpen the high detail areas. So we can use a sharpen filter for that. So I'll go to live filter. And confusingly enough, it's called unsharp mask in Affinity Photo for some reason. I don't know why. Let's zoom in. And we can increase the radius. And we can really sharpen up those edges. So this kind of looks nice, I guess. We're improving the edge quality. However, now we have the opposite problem. So if I zoom out, now if I go to my low detail area, we've actually added noise. The sharpen filter, which fixed the low detail areas, made the sharp mask fixed the high detail areas and made the low detail areas look worse. So of course I should toggle it. So this is before and this is after with the sharpen mask. Teek, I'm not on Telegram at the moment, no. Yeah, I don't really I guess if people want to contact me, through YouTube's the best way right now. So that's the main area I'm on these days. So this sharpen mask, like I said, made the details look better, but it made our low detail area look worse. So this is kind of the problem we're trying to solve, is that these types of operations that improve our high detail area are counterproductive for low detail areas, and vice versa. The things that make our low detail areas smooth out harm our edges and higher detailed areas. So the question, of course, comes, is there a way to separate these two areas so we can work on them independently? And that's basically kind of the whole point of frequency separation as we get to it. So let's first talk about how we could actually isolate the high detail area. And I've been using this word detail, like what does detail actually mean? We'll get more clear on that as we go on. Hi TM, I am TM, doing well. So let's look at the high detail issue first. So let me open a file here. And let's open this. So when we want to pick up details in an image, what we can do is something called edge detection. And this is, like the name implies, it's going to find the edges in our image. So I made a simple example here, just a bitmap graphic, and I'm in Affinity Photo. So edge detection in Affinity Photo is a destructive operation. So I'm gonna copy my layer over here so I have something to backup copy. I'll call this edge detection. And then the way we can run the edge detection algorithm is we can go to filters, detect, and I'm going to say detect edges. You can do horizontal or vertical, but I'm just going to do all of them. So I'll click this button here. And what we can see is that we found the edges of our shapes. In fact, we even found the edges of our words. So if I zoom into this part here, you can see originally it was these shapes. And then when I ran the edge detection algorithm, it just outlined them. Okay, if I zoom out, the checkerboard over here was actually a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought it was interesting the way this part here worked out. So that's what the checkerboard looked like originally. Then when I ran the edge detection on it, the corner, the edge, the top and bottom parts, you kind of see that it caught the outside edge and the inside edge. Okay. Hi, Keys. Thanks for joining from the Netherlands. So the edge detection is going to bring out what we can call detailed parts of our image. So if I look at this middle graphic here, you know, a lot of details happening here. Lots of changes in colors, lots of edges. Edge detection found that. All right. Now, this may seem like some super sophisticated AI algorithm, but actually edge detection is like one of the oldest image processing algorithms in existence. Like I first heard about it when I was in school like 25 years ago, and even then it was like ancient history. So the actual process is quite simple, and kind of understanding just at a high level how it works, I think will give you some insight into it. So if we zoom in here, all the algorithm really does is it's going to look at a pixel. Let's say we have this blue pixel here in the middle. I don't know. Let's let me add a little pixel layer here. Yeah. So let's say I have this pixel in the middle, like here. What it's going to do is it's going to take the value of that pixel, and it's going to just subtract the average value of the pixels around it. Okay. So when a pixel is the same as the pixels around it, what happens is we get black. I actually accidentally made a mark on it with the pixel thing there, but let me clear that up. There we go. So yeah, so when an area is all the same, a pixel is the value of the pixel is just being subtracted from the value of the pixels around it. So that's why we get black. So if, you know, a value minus itself is 0, so we just call that black. So the interesting thing, of course, is what happens when we get to an edge. So on an edge, let's say if we're looking at like one of these pixels over here, you know, let me highlight it. Let's say this pixel here, that guy is different than the pixels around him. So the average value of the pixels around here are going to be different than this pixel here. And the result is we get some type of number that we take the absolute value of, and we end up getting an edge here, okay? Hi, Fulvio. Hi, Rojan. Watching from Manila and Italy. Thanks for joining. So I'm talking about edge detection right now, and this is a way we can find details in an image, okay? Now let's look at a more interesting image. This is kind of a fabricated example I made, this one here. Let's look at an actual photograph that's more realistic. Hi, Vela. So this is kind of a typical landscape photo, right? So let me once again duplicate it, Control J, just so we have our backup copy. Edge detection. So once again, I'll run edge detection on this. So I'll go to filters, detect edges. And now we can see a more interesting result. So this is an edge detection of a more realistic photo. So let's zoom in here. And, you know, as we see, we can actually find the edges of these tree lines and the edges of the trees. So it found these parts. We can see in the grass, there's lots of detail in the grass. So all these little details are being found. Because there's all these little differences in the pixel values, they're all being picked up here. In fact, there's even in the sky, you have these kind of subtle trails. I don't know if it's like a jet or something or some, I don't know where it is, but the edge detection found that, okay? Now what's interesting, I think, is that like the sun kind of disappears. So we have the sun in the middle here. When we ran the edge detection, the sun is gone. And the reason is, you can see the sun doesn't really have a well-defined edge. It's kind of smooth and just kind of fades out. So the edge detection doesn't really notice that. You can see a little bit of black in there maybe, but it just kind of disappears. So that's really, that's how we can actually find details in an image using edge detection. And I explained the algorithm in simple ways. There's more sophisticated ways to clean it up. You can imagine there's thresholding and maybe, you know, more advanced weighting of the values around a pixel. But essentially you're just subtracting the value of the pixel from the average values around it. And when they're all the same, you get black. And when they're not, you get some type of value. The more difference there are, the stronger the edge you get. So this is how we can find details in an image. So now let's look at the opposite problem. Let's look at like how do we actually smooth parts of an image. So now we want to see how do we fix like how do we find low detail parts of our image. So let's go to that file. And actually I'll just use the same one again. Let me delete this. So to find low detail in an image, I say find low detail, but like to enhance low detail, we can use a blur filter like I showed you before. So if I zoom in, again, we have this sky here, and you can see there's all these little differences, little bits of gray and white and darker blue, kind of a mess. So what I can do is I can add a blur filter to it. So let's go to Live Filters, Gaussian Blur, and I can blur it. It should blur, I don't know why it's not. Oh, because I have it locked? Yeah, maybe this is more. Blur. Oh, there it is, okay. I think my computer's a little slow at the moment, but yeah. As I turn on the blur, you can see it smoothing it out. So let me toggle it off. So this is off, all the noise, on, blur. So this is actually like good for fixing low detail areas. We're actually smoothing things out a little bit. So as I zoom out, of course, you can see the effect of the blur. So this is really showing you the big shapes in your image. And this is actually what we want. We don't want all those little details. We just want the big stuff. Like, okay, the trees, we got like kind of like brown part going over here. The grass, we got like essentially this big yellow or whatever, dark greenish or light greenish color. The sky, we got this blue. So this is a low detail filter, all right? Later on, you may think this is like pointless, like why would we want to blur something? But actually this will be kind of important later on. So I could show you the flower one also. So again, with the flower, this was the first example I showed you. If you want to clean up this area here, Live Filter, Gaussian Blur, and we can clean it up. So blurring is the way we're going to fix the low detail areas, all right? So that's kind of like the two halves of low detail and high detail. High detail, think edge detection. Low detail, think blur. And I'll mention this a couple times throughout the video here. So you may wonder, like, where is this term frequency coming into play? Like, why do we talk about frequency? Well, so for example, I'm talking about the frequency separation or frequency in an image. You can just think of the word frequency as being equivalent to detail. It's essentially the same thing. So here I have this demonstration here in this image. You can see these are the low frequency parts of our image, like the sky and maybe even some of the clouds here. It's very, you know, there's not a lot of changes, not a lot of sudden changes. The high detail parts are these buildings here, very, very high detail. We have white going to dark blue, going to white, going to blue. Just lots of changes happening very quickly in a small area, okay? So when you see frequency mentioned with respect to images, it essentially means detail, okay? Now, let me give you a little more detail about this. Let me draw a little demonstration here. So you can think of this, it may sound kind of strange to talk about frequency in terms of images. Like, you think of frequency in terms of sound waves and things like that, but there's a lot of kind of signal terminology that is applicable to images. I mean, images are signals. That's what pixels are. And, you know, we use noise to talk about images too, right? So when you think of noise in an image, you're thinking of kind of randomness among the pixels, okay? So we can also apply frequency to an image. So let me give you a kind of a live demonstration here. So if you want to think of frequency, so this would be a low frequency image, okay? And let me show you why I would call it low. So I'll do the brush tool here. And the way you can think about low frequency is, imagine if you're just kind of like moving across the canvas here. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. Now I'm just moving across the canvas here, and now I hit gray, and there's a bit of a jump. So that's a jump in value, right? And I go back to white, so it's kind of just moving along again. Very low frequency. Another little gray, go up, go down. The white's all the same, low frequency. Another little gray, come back down. Just kind of going through the white. This one's a little bit darker, so maybe you go higher, and then you go out like this. So this is like a very low frequency image, and I'm just showing left to right, but in a real image, you would have variance going up and down as well, okay? Let's look at a high frequency image. So this would be high frequency. So I'm moving here, it's all white. Now I have like a big jump in black, right? And now I have a big decrease back to white. Whoop. I'll move along here. So then we have a little bit, kind of a little, maybe halfway black, going like that. This black's a little bit stronger than the previous one. Going like this. About the same again. Same again. Back to white. And like a big jump with black. And back to white again. So this is why essentially why we talk about frequency, okay, in an image. So this would be the low detail parts of our image, low frequency. And then high frequency is just quick rates of change, lots of sudden blacks and whites and going up and down a lot in a very small area. Now, putting this terminology all together, we get to our bandpass filters. And now we kind of know what frequency means. You see these topics, low bandpass filter, high bandpass filter. What this really means is when we say bandpass, we're meaning what frequency are you allowing to pass through. So when we say something is a low bandpass frequency, low bandpass filter, we're saying you're allowing low frequencies to pass through. And frequency means detail, so we're saying you're allowing low detail to pass through. So a low bandpass filter is a blur filter. It's allowing just the low frequencies to pass through. A high bandpass filter is edge detection. So the high bandpass filter is destroying all the small little details. It's getting rid of all the repetitive information in the big open areas here of low detail, and it's keeping all the high detail areas, okay? So this would be a high bandpass filter, something that keeps detail. And then a low bandpass filter, very simple, is just like a blur filter. It's just keeping those big, huge blocks of color there, okay? So this is really the key to kind of understanding a lot of the terminology that we're going to see. So when we say frequency separation, what we're talking about is how do we separate the high band information from the low band information, okay? So now that we have like these terms defined, let's finally click that button that says frequency separation in Affinity Photo. So let me open up an image here. So it's quite often done with portraits, but so I'll use a portrait here. And let me delete this. So this is an original portrait here. I mean, it's the original one. Frequency separation is also destructive, so I'll copy this again. So I'll say Control J, and I'll just say frequency separation. So the frequency separation is under the filters here. So I say filters, frequency separation. And what we're going to do, this will be interesting because what we're going to do is we're going to separate our image into two parts, a edge detected part and a blurry part. So let's do that, frequency separation. And now here we have the result. Well, we have the potential result. We can tweak it a little bit. Let me increase the radius so you can see. So down here you can see this label. On the left side we have the high frequency, and on the right side we have the low frequency. So let me make it again more extreme. So the left side is essentially edge detection. So we've separated this part into the edge detection. The right side is the blur filter, okay? Hi Guyan. Yeah, the live stream will be on my channel under the live column later on, like immediately when it's finished. So all my live streams are there for future watching. So some of these concepts you might want to review. I'm also going to make a video on this, or I did shoot a video on this already. I have to edit it and put it out this week, and it'll be out there. So I'm on the frequency separation menu here, and you can see I can actually decide how strong do I want the edge detection to be and how strong do I want the blur filter to be. So let me just click apply for a second so you can see what happens. So I'll click apply. And you don't see any difference yet. What happens is it splits your result into two different layers. So let me turn off the original. So the original isn't being used anymore. So the high frequency layer, this is what that looks like. I'll turn this off. And then the low frequency layer is this, the blurriness here. Now the high frequency layer, excuse me, you'll notice the blend mode is linear light. And when you turn the high frequency layer on with linear light, when you put it above the low frequency layer, you get your original image. So these two things together are the original image. So let me turn on my original below it. You're not going to see any difference here, but I'll kind of show you. If I turn off the high frequency and low frequency, you're not seeing any change. The reason you're not seeing any change is because high frequency plus low frequency equals your original image. So you're not going to see any difference between these two things. Now the interesting thing is how you can actually edit these levels separately. Let me delete this again. And I'll go back to that edge detection or that frequency separation menu. So the question here kind of becomes like, okay, this is all well and good, but what do I actually want to do for the radius value here? And in general, kind of the main guideline is, I'm trying to get this centered there. There, okay. So in general, you want to kind of tweak the radius to the level where you start to see details on the left that you want to remove, okay? That's kind of the point of it. So I can see maybe there's certain details here that I want to get rid of, like some little marks or something like that. I'll increase it again. So right here, there's some texture here that we want to alter. So you just kind of want to do it just enough so you can start seeing the things you want to get rid of, all right? And the blur will just be the complement of that, all right? So I'll click apply. And I forgot to actually duplicate this. Let me just do that. And I'll do that again. I think I had it about there. Apply. So the really interesting thing about this technique is that it allows you to edit colors and detail separately. So what I can do is, if I just look at the frequency layer, I can do something like I can take my in-painting brush tool here, right? And I can just get rid of little areas that I don't like. Let's say little parts around here. So I'm using the in-painting brush tool. And again, when you touch up photos, it's kind of like a matter of like your own preference, what you're doing. I'm just trying to show you a difference here so you can see what's happening. So I just want to get rid of certain things here. Now if I turn on both layers again, let me toggle this so you don't, so this is the original image and this is the frequency separated edited image, okay? Hi Mabel, thanks for joining. Glad you can finally watch a live one. So this is my edited one. This is the original, okay? So edited original. Now keep in mind, all I did was edit the high frequency layer, okay? Now, let me turn this off again. Now, I think for this picture, the really interesting thing is what can happen when you edit the low frequency layer here. So let me go to the low frequency layer. So this is where we can start working with our colors a little bit. And a lot of these little kind of blemishes and things like that, we can actually fix on the low frequency layer. So let me get my brush here. So typically you're gonna wanna use a paintbrush here with like very low flow. So I'll do brush. I think I'll just do soft brush. And maybe I'll put the flow down like at, I don't know, 10 or something lower. Hi, Rolex. So very low flow. A little goes a long way. So I'm on the low frequency layer. So this is the blurry layer. And if I hold Alt, I'll select the color under my brush. So if I zoom in, I can press Alt and I can kind of start painting out little areas here that I don't like. I can kind of fix things if I want. And I'm just pressing Alt, I'm sampling a color, and I'm just kind of smoothing something out here. So I'll press Alt, sample that, and I'll smooth this out. Now again, like how you want to do this in your own photos is kind of up to you. I'm just trying to give you an example here. So I clean that up a little bit. Let's compare it to the original. So if I turn my adjustments off, you can see this is the original, and this is the change. And the really interesting thing is look at how the detail on the lips is still there. It's just purely the color that was changed. So this is original, changed, original, changed. We can actually do more in other areas, maybe down here, okay? So I would just go to the low frequency layer. I'm going to press Alt on my paintbrush. I'm just gonna paint around here. I'm just gonna kind of smooth things out a little bit. Kind of get rid of the red. So I'm just pressing Alt, and that samples the color under your brush. So let's see how this looks. So this is the original, fix, original, fixed. And this is really kind of the key thing with frequency separation. Actually, if I go back to this one, look how like, you know, just kind of like the facial hair a little bit there. It's still staying there because that's in the high detail layer. All I did was change the color. So imagine if you were like kind of smoothing this out with like in painting or something like that, you'd really destroy all this detail. But with the just working on the low frequency layer, you can actually just alter the color without affecting the detail itself, okay? And this is really kind of the main purpose of that, of this whole technique. We can really split the editing of the highly detailed parts with the color underneath it. Yeah, Piska's talking about removing acne and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's definitely highly used for that type of thing. Also lots of smoothing for like the face and stuff. So again, I don't know how much I would actually smooth this, but this one here, you can do a lot of smoothing. It's a little hard because it has to like have some open area to smooth. Let's see if I can smooth this a little bit here. Again, I don't know if you'd want to do this in real life. I'm just trying to, let me show you the example here. So let's see how that looks. So you can see this is the change here. And notice how the color is staying essentially the same. It's just those details that we've gotten rid of in this area here. So it's really, really a powerful technique for that. I found some other interesting uses too. Let me see. It has all sorts of applications for like textures and things like that. If I find like, so like if I have like a brick wall or something like that, right? So I could try like, maybe I could do like frequency separation on this. And then maybe this is like an easier way to like change colors or something. If you want to like have like a spray paint effect on the wall. Let's see, brush, I don't know, acrylic. You can see I'm painting on the wall, but I'm keeping all that detail there. I guess I could even do that. Maybe I could like change the opacity or something. So, you know, all this detail is remaining, but I'm just changing the color. So it's kind of a cool thing to do. So that's really the concept of frequency separation. And like I said, it's used a lot for portrait touch-ups. You can do it for landscape too. it has lots of graphics applications. And this whole concept of frequency and bands and things like that, it comes up again in several places. For example, if you look at the live filters, there's a high pass filter. Actually, let me show you one thing that is interesting. I found it interesting. I don't know if you will, but maybe it'll shed some light on how this works. We can actually manually create our own frequency separation, and you can do that with the bandpass filter and the Gaussian blur. So like I said before, if you want, I'll say high frequency. And what I'll do is I'll create a live filter, and I can do a high pass filter on it. So we say high pass, again, this means high frequency, allow high frequencies. So I'll say, I don't know, 5 pixels. Let's say 10 pixels. Okay, so that's the high pass at 10 pixels. Let me turn that off. If I actually do a Gaussian blur, I'll call this low frequency. If I do a Gaussian blur, and then I do that at 5 pixels, that was my high pass mask, right? It was 10 pixels, oops. So if I do my Gaussian blur at 10 pixels, if I have these both turned on, if I set my top one to linear light, this is actually the original image. So if I unclick it, well, I'll put the one below it. You can see we just manually created a high and low pass filter here. So there's no change between this and that. So what the frequency separation here is doing, I think it's basically just a shortcut where it's just behind the scenes applying a high pass filter to this and then doing the Gaussian blur to the one behind it. So yeah, that's just a little bonus tip there. But if you understand that part, you definitely understand how the whole concept works. And I guess this way is actually less destructive too. So that's that topic. I think it's something that's quite useful for photo touch-ups and things like that. I see a lot of videos describing it, but I'm always frustrated because they don't talk about what frequency is or what band pass masks are and things like that, despite the fact of using those terms. So definitely if you have questions on that, let me know. I'll be releasing a video on that subject this week, hopefully, going through the steps I showed you today, and it'll hopefully add some, give you some additional skills for your photo editing. So that's that topic. So I'll move on to the questions for the rest of the session here. Let me get some stuff going. Let's go down here. So I got this question. Someone was asking if they made a shape, how can they actually save it? Like they made a shape in Affinity Designer or something like that. How can they save it for future use? And yeah, the answer is actually pretty straightforward. There's an assets panel. So let me just show you how you could do that. No problem, Teak. She mentioned that she used some like Polaroid frame. So let's say, okay, let's create a little Polaroid frame. I don't know what color, they're kind of like an off-white or something like that. And then maybe, maybe like that. Maybe like this. And I'll just group it here. So maybe this is my Polaroid frame. I can do a little FX, add an inner shadow to that. Makes it look a little more realistic. But anyway, I can call this, frame. And what you can do is you can show the assets panel, so window, assets. And it's fairly straightforward. You just select your object. Actually, you can create a category here. So I'll create new category. I'll just say Trent assets. And then you can say add from selection. So I'll do that. And now I have my little object here. So when I go and I create a new file, I can drag it in. Now the main thing is like, is this usable in Affinity Photo? So if you created something here, can you use it in Affinity Photo? The answer is yes. You have to go with your category selected. You have to go to link category, and that will make it available. If I go to Affinity Photo again, I can go to window, assets, and hopefully it's there. Yeah, Trent assets. And now I can bring this in like that. So you can share between the programs. And then what you can do is, if you don't want that to be linked anymore, you can go to a delete category. And you can just say delete from this app or all the apps. So if you want to delete it from everything, you can say delete from, this will delete from Affinity Designer and Photo, or just delete from Photo. I'll just delete from everything. So the answer to the question is, yep, you can do that. And the assets panel is how you do it. So next question. So yeah, this is an interesting one. So I got this, I made a video about this too, and I'll post it soon. So I was saying how you can't warp images in Affinity Designer. Actually, that's not true. You can, but it's kind of a little convoluted process. Let me show you how to do that here. And let me open a file on that. So I warped everything already. Let me bring it out. Okay, so warping vectors and text is quite easy in Affinity Designer. I'm in Affinity Designer here, so I selected this vector here. This is just a vector. There's, you know, curves and nodes and all that kind of good stuff. And to warp this whole thing, I can just go down here on the bottom right, select warp group. And then you have many different options, but I'll just use perspective. And you know, this is a easy way to warp your vector, however you want to do it. So you can get all these different crazy things going. So like wherever you have going, you can put it on a sign or something like that. You can easily warp vectors. Similarly, with the text, it's the same process. This is artistic text here. I just made some text, and I can go on the warp group. I can choose perspective, and I can change it there. I can even, yeah, you can add extra points, but you can change it however you want. So the thing that happens with a lot of people is they're like, okay, I have an image. This should work exactly the same way. So they go and they click on the warp group perspective, and then what happens is this kind of thing happens. So it doesn't actually do what you expect it to do, and it's kind of frustrating. But you can actually do it in Affinity Designer. It's just a little extra step. So what you have to do to warp an image in Affinity Designer is you have to go to the pixel persona here. And then the way you warp it is with the image selected, you go to layer, and it's new live filter layer, and then perspective. You can choose mesh also, but we'll just do perspective. And now you can actually warp the image in Affinity Designer, however you like. And you can close this box. And the cool thing is, like, it's non-destructive, so if you go back to it later on, you can change it again, and it's gonna, you know, it's going to be still editable. So that's the way that works. And one kind of thing that's a little tricky about this is when you've warped your image, if you click on the part like that's actually out here, sometimes it's not selecting it. And what you actually have to remember is you have to select the part of where your image would be if you didn't warp it. So you have to click in this bounding box if you want to select your warped image like this. So if I click out here, it's not working. But if I click in here, I can actually move it around. So yeah, so just a review. If you want to warp images in Affinity Designer, you have to be in the pixel persona. And then you have to go to layer, new live filter layer, perspective, or mesh there. I don't know why it just doesn't work the normal way. It would be nice if it did, but yeah, they don't. You just have to take that extra step for some reason. So that's that one. Okay, so question 3. Pisk, this is your question, Pisk6. He sent me this image here, and this was a bitmap image originally, and his question is, how can I actually edit it in Affinity Designer as a vector? So the answer is, well, it's kind of challenging, but let me see. He ran it through a vectorizer program, right? Correct me if I'm wrong here. So this is the result of running it through a vectorizer program. And what happened is, as we can see from the original image, I'll copy this over here. We're just talking about like the logo. We're just talking about like the graphic part. We're not worried about the text part. There's lots of different layers. I'm trying to get something to show here. Yeah, so running it through a vectorizer program, it's always going to be kind of tricky, like how it actually will work. The fundamental challenge with this type of thing is that it was a bitmap, so we're not actually going to get information behind this bird here. So this is kind of like the bird, and you have these designs in the back. So one trick when you do get something like this is there's the select same option, which can help you rapidly select lots of things that are the same. So like, for example, moving the bird was actually fairly well separated as far as I could tell. So you could actually like move the bird around here. So we kind of got lucky with that. I think for the most part, the bird is okay. Going forward, then you would have to like kind of like delete all these parts here or move these parts. I don't think these parts in here even mattered. But for example, if you wanted to delete all the things like this, well, I can see the stroke is like this here. So you can say select same stroke color, and then I can press delete. So that's a quick way to delete like lots of things that are the same color, or select lots of things that are the same color. And a lot of times when you do these vectorizer programs, they create lots of like sub-vectors that aren't really useful at all. And you just want to delete them really quickly. So that's one way you can get rid of things. And I think maybe we can also do that for this part. So this is also a stroke. So I can say select same stroke color. And now you have a problem. Like some of these things are like actually maybe slightly different colors or something like that. Like this here. So you can kind of go through and manually delete it. Now, going forward from here, what you'd have to do is somehow you'd have to like fix the rest of your images here. So like on the edge, you have like nodes and things like that. Perhaps you could like drag them forward or repair them in some way here. Now this would be kind of, it would be somewhat difficult. You'd have to like actually, figure out like, okay, what's it supposed to look like? So maybe something like this, you could kind of repair it eventually, and you just kind of do that for the rest of them, like that. I think my main approach for this would be to just literally like say like, could I build it from scratch again? And some of these effects, there are actually standard effects that do this type of thing here. So if that's an option, and again, this is gonna be more future-proof when people have changes in the future, because like I guarantee like if you have people that want you to do certain things, like later on they're gonna be like, oh, can you change this? Can you change that? And when you kind of just go and manually fix something like this, it's gonna be really hard. But if you kind of build it from scratch as a vector in a editable way, in a reasonably editable way, you can actually make it easier to change in the future. Some of these effects are actually fairly straightforward. Like, you might not be able to get the exact thing going. So for example, if you draw a line, let's say you curve it a little bit or something. Let's just pretend we have this. We could actually make the stroke a little bit bigger. We could sample the color. So I could say, okay, let's do this for the color. And something you can do to like kind of simulate this effect is you can actually, there's the pressure of the stroke. So you can go to the pressure curve here. And if you change it, you can actually get it looking a little more organic. If you want to like make it look a little more handwritten or something like that. You can play with it for different levels, but this is kind of like just going to vary the stroke as you go, the stroke weight as you move through it. Now, one of the main effects of this, I believe, is the 3D filter here. So there's like if you go to FX, this is kind of like a retro style here. If you go to the FX, I believe 3D, you can kind of get this, you can experiment with it a little bit, but there's these different options down here to like actually add like a highlight going through the thing. And I don't know the exact settings to replicate that, but I guess it would be, somewhere along these lines, you can kind of get that going here. So you can see this is kind of similar to what's going on over here. You can change the direction of the light if you want. So there's the light there. And you can like kind of fix the color a little bit going through there. So kind of, as far as I can tell, the two main ways are manually fix it by kind of painfully, connecting these things and deleting things out, or, try to just trace this and use the 3D effects. Maybe use a little bit of tweaking to get like these highlights looking right. Again, I don't know the exact settings for this. It would require playing with it a little bit, but that's kind of the main thing. That's my main recommendation. So I hope that helps you going forward. Let us know. Let us know what the final result looks like. I'm curious to see it. So yeah, that's that, kind of using a bitmap and either vectorizing it and fixing it, or just recreating it from scratch. All right, next question. I'm creating a desktop banner. So she says she's creating a desktop banner, and it's low resolution even for PNG. So yes, like this will probably be like quite low resolution, especially that height value, depending on what you're going to do it. Maybe it'd be good on a phone. I don't know. It depends what you're doing it. So she's saying, if she increases the PNG size, will that affect the file size or just increase the resolution? So yeah, in general, as you increase the resolution, you increase the file size. However, it's actually not as obvious as a lot of people think. Let me show you an example here. This kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier with the frequency separation. Do not save. So what causes files to be a certain size is the resolution has some effect on it, but it's actually the complexity of the image. So let me create a new image here. And I'll create it like 3000 by 3000. And let me just fill it with like blue. Blue is kind of a nice, non-offensive color. So I'll export this as a PNG. So let's do File, Export. I don't know where this is going to go. Let me just change. Yeah, let's just go to new folder, live stream. So I'll call it blue. And if I look at that, let's see, view, details. So it's 35 kilobytes. So I saved a 3000 by 3000 file, pixel file, and it's 35 kilobytes. Now what I can do, let's save the same file size but something different. Let's add some noise to it. So I'll say noise, add noise. Let me just maximize the noise. So you can see this is kind of the worst case scenario for saving a file when you have all this random noise in it. So let me apply this. Let's do that again. File, export. And I'll export that PNG. Still 3000 by 3000. Let's call it noise. Any bets on how big this is going to be? Let's see. All right. So that same file is 25 kilobytes, 25 megabytes when we fill it with noise. So these two files are exactly the same resolution, width and height, both 3000, but the one that's all blue compresses to 35 kilobytes, and the one that's pure noise is 25 megabytes. So going back to your question, this is something that sometimes you have to consider. If you have very complex images with detailed backgrounds, lots of information going on, lots of little noisy textures and things like that covering your whole image, it's going to be very big. But if your image is just like a logo with lots of white space behind it, that type of thing compresses quite well. And I used to have this problem on Printify where I would have certain images would just be so big because the detail would be, there'd be a texture or something on the background that would just make it really huge. So a lot of times you can export to a JPEG, and JPEGs let you control the quality so you can actually compress a little bit. But of course, when it's lossy, so you're going to lose some detail there. So yes, increasing PNG will affect the size, but it might not be as linear as you think. I would just say double it and see what happens. So, it depends on if it's within the file size limits of whatever your target destination is, I would say go with it. So that's kind of my advice on that. And now we have a question from Kat. So she says she does paper sketches of people in history. So she imports the sketches, again, calling back to earlier. So she says Affinity Photo, she detects the edges and rasterizes to a mask. And this gives her a transparent image. And then she does painting underneath that. So I think that's one way to do it. Another way I like to do it is to actually use my sketch as a multiply layer. So let me show you that here. Opening a file here. Hopefully it opens. It's 48 megabytes. Okay. So obviously I did not draw this, but so here's a sketch. So let's say you want to color this sketch. Well, what you can do is you can add a pixel layer below it. And again, I'm in Affinity Photo. And if I take my image, if I set the blend mode to multiply, if I go to my pixel layer below, I can actually paint on it. So let's choose a cool brush. I know, acrylic. Okay. Sure. Let's do that one. So I can actually paint under my sketch like this. And this works because I set the blend mode to multiply. So I can see through my image there. So you can paint like this underneath your sketch. And I used to do this like on the iPad. I would like, on Procreate especially, I would like sketch on one layer. And again, I'm not doing like the world's best paint job here, but this is how you could actually paint underneath your sketch if you wanted to. And you could just keep going like that. And then really what I have is, that's my paint layer. Looks great, right? And then this is above it here. And you can like threshold this at various levels. You can like change the curves, I guess, if you want. You know, so you can make it more or brighter or not. So you can kind of remove some, if you want to remove some of the grain of the paper, you can do that. So there we've adjusted the white level, so we got rid of that white, the paper texture. So, whoops, that is so that was with it before, and then with the levels, we've gotten our sketch in a more pure form. And then, you know, you could crop this out. So you could also maybe change the black level. Maybe that would enhance some of the lines. So that's what I would try. And that's what I used to do when I used to do more sketching on my iPad. I would actually just create my sketch layer would just be multiply above the painting layer below it. So that was the last question for today. Kind of a lot of information today, especially in the first half. Hopefully it was useful. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes if you want to ask any other kind of random questions. Like I said, I do these live streams every Sunday, and I try to kind of pick a main topic and then answer your questions from throughout the week. So if you have any questions, of course, you can ask them now, or you can just add a comment to this video. I'll put it in the next live stream. But so far this week, I have some videos. I'm making some videos on Midjourney, so I want to do some videos on that. And for Affinity, I have the video on frequency separation, and I did one on the perspective in Affinity Designer with images there. One of the big topics, I think I'm trying to decide what I want to do for next week's stream. I'll probably finally do channels, which is this here. So that is something I think it could be beneficial for people to understand how that works. I think that's another thing that people kind of wonder about. So thanks, Hector. So channels, I can't promise that'll be next week's topic. I always change my mind midway throughout the week, but it probably will be. That seems like a good meaty topic for there. Bandpass mask. Yeah, I could do that also. Maybe I'll do a video on that and do a mini talk on it. So the bandpass mask is here. Yeah, that's the one mask I still have to do. So bandpass mask. That's kind of a trickier one too. So yeah, a lot of the concepts in the frequency separation will apply to bandpass mask also. So you're right. That's the last one of these I have to do. So with that, so it's been about an hour. So thanks for joining me today. I think I'll sign off now. And again, if you have any questions about the topics we covered today or other stuff, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you. You can also send me email. That's through the About part of my YouTube channel there. There's a link. If you click through it, you can find the contact information there. But, you know, asking in public is kind of the best way because I can answer there and everyone sees the result. So thanks for joining me today. Hope it was useful and hope to see you next week. Thanks. Bye, guys.